Hey guys, welcome back. This is Miss Walraven. I hope you guys had a wonderful Christmas break and a happy new year. I'm so sorry that I cannot be with you for these 3 days. Unfortunately, I am stuck at home, quarantined, and hoping that it doesn't hit me next. So the first thing I want y'all to do when y'all come in here is I want y'all to have a seat. I'll have a new seating chart when I come back, so please just sit in your regular seat from the previous weeks that we've been here. I want you to get your computer out, a pencil, and a piece of paper. You may or may not get to the paper activity today, but I still want you to have it out just in case. Today I want you to complete K2 and K3 on iExcel. K2 should already be finished for 8th grade, so if you've already done that, I want you to give the 9th grade a try. And in K3, I want you to do 8th grade and also give 9th grade a try as well. 8th grade needs to be at an 80%, and 9th grade needs anywhere between 60 to 80%, please. So the very first thing that I want to review with you since we've been on break is the difference between an argument and a claim. So an argument is speaking or writing that expresses a claim, which is a position on a problem or issue. An argument's title often gives readers a good idea of what an author's claim will be or their position on a particular issue. So as you can see on your screen and on mine as well, there are some titles in the middle of this page. The first one says, "What the Brain Says About Maturity." So basically, I want you to review the titles of the 5 arguments, and I want you to write down which one of those, and there may be more than one, indicates that the author, they may not have a clear sense on which side of the argument they're going to take. So which one of those titles seems like they're not going to take a side of an argument? They're going to kind of give you both. And go ahead and take a couple minutes to write that down now. Now that you've taken some time to review, some possible answers could be leaving the voting age alone, better training for new drivers, and mandatory service to become an adult. They all indicate clear claims that show a position on an issue, but what the brain says about maturity and a parent's role in the path to adulthood, it doesn't quite give you a clear sense of what the author's position on that issue might be, whether they're for it or against it. Before we move on and actually start reading, I did want to point out that all of these articles are going to relate to this one argument that's highlighted big in green right there that says, "When do kids become adults?" So basically, all of these little articles are going to either support or counter-argue our argument, meaning it's opposing our argument. When do kids become adults? What age? All right, now, I want you to also take your pencil and your piece of paper, and I want you to answer this question. It doesn't have to go into deep in depth. It's totally up to you. But my question for you is it time to rethink the age of adulthood? Do the age requirements for certain rights need to be lowered or raised, or should they at least be consistent? So I want you to think really hard right now that the voting age, not the voting age, let's think something younger. So the legal drinking age is 21. The legal driving age is 16. I want you to think right now, does those age limits seem fair or not? And tell me why or why not. You may use your computer to do a little bit of research if you need to. Just give me at least one piece of evidence that supports what age would be the legal age and why you think that. Now that you've had the time to do some brainstorming, let's dive a little bit deeper into our reading. So our first one is what the brain says about maturity. Neuroscientists now know that brain maturation continues far later into development than had been believed previously. Significant changes in brain anatomy and activity are still taking place during young adulthood, especially in prefrontal regions that are important for planning ahead, anticipating the future consequences of one's decisions, controlling impulses, and comparing risk and reward. Indeed, some brain regions and systems do not reach full maturity until the early or mid-20s. Should this new knowledge prompt us to rethink where we draw legal boundaries between minors and adults? Maybe, but it's not as straightforward as it seems, for at least 2 reasons. Remember, students, that a claim is an author's position on a topic or issue. A claim may be stated directly or indirectly, so sometimes you may need to figure it out on your own. So let's look back at lines 12 through 14. It's the lines that are highlighted on your screen. So let's look at them. Let's try to identify the writer's claim. So should this new knowledge prompt us to rethink where we draw the legal boundaries between minor and adults? Why might the writer have presented his claim in question and answer form? I want you to take a couple minutes to think about that and then write down your answer on your piece of paper. Why might the reader have presented his claim in a question and answer? What makes you think that? There's no right or wrong answers. I just want to know your thinking. So after you've done some thinking, here's a possible answer. It connects his claim to the first of his supporting reasons. We don't quite know those reasons yet, so we're going to read on. So first, different brain regions and systems mature along different timetables. There's no single age at which the adolescent brain becomes an adult brain. You guys are adolescents, meaning you're a young adult. That's an adolescent. Systems responsible for logical reasoning mature by the time people are 16, but those involved in self-regulation are still developing in young adulthood. This is why 16-year-olds are just as competent as adults when it comes to granting informed medical consent, but still immature in ways that diminish their criminal responsibility, as the Supreme Court has noted in several recent cases. So meaning like you're not old enough quite to make your own medical decisions, but you're not old enough to go to big boy court, is what that says. Using different ages for different legal boundaries seems odd, but it would make neuroscientific sense if we did it rationally. Second, science has never had much of an influence on these sort of decisions. If it did, we wouldn't have ended up with a society that permits teenagers to drive before they can see rated R movies on their own, or go to war before they can buy beer. Surely the maturity required to operate a car or face combat exceeds that required to handle sexy movies or drinking. Age boundaries are drawn for mainly political reasons, not scientific ones. It's unlikely that brain science will have much of an impact on these thresholds, no matter what the science says. So again, remember, in an argument, an author provides support or information, such as facts and statistics, to back up his or her claim. This includes reasons and evidence. Like I said, the examples and the facts and statistics. That's your support. That's your how. How do I prove this? Well, here's the reasons why. Here's my evidence. So now, I want you to reread lines 27 through 31. And I want you to tell how the author uses examples to support their claim that scientific information about brain maturity is not the primary way our society decides when maturity occurs. So again, I want you to use examples from our reading right there that shows how he supported his claim. What was our claim? That there should be, that where would the legal boundary between minor and adult line be drawn? Where did he give us proof for that? So think about the R-rated movies, age boundaries, look at all those reasonings. And I want you to highlight a couple of those on your, or no, don't highlight them, actually write them down on your piece of paper. And you can re-shorten them, reword them, just as long as you can go back and say, here it is in the text. So now that you've taken a minute to look at your evidence, here would be an example of a correct answer. So I would have chose, the author states that teenagers can drive before they can see rated R movies on their own and that they can fight in wars before they can buy beer. So that supports the scientific information how brain maturity is not a primary way our society decides. All right, now I have like a little brain activity that I want you to do before we move on. I want you to write the word mature or maturity as big on that paper, right smack dead in the middle. Once you've done that, I want you to write some words, and these words could come from that story, you can Google them, but I want you to write some words that helps you, when you hear the word mature, what do you think of? So like you could think of how you behave, you could think of like things you get to do when you're more mature. What do you think of when you hear the word mature? You can say an age limit. The possibilities are endless how you want to do this. I just want to know, when you hear the word mature, what comes to your mind? You can draw a picture. Anything is acceptable. I just want to know, what does mature mean in your way? So when I come back, I want a few of y'all to be able to just share those ideas with me. So please make sure you're keeping up with this paper. All right, now let's move on. So I just want to remind you that in an argument, a claim, which is the author's position on an issue, is backed up with reasons and evidence. So now let's look on to Leave the Voting Age Alone by Jenny Chang. The 26th Amendment, ratified in 1971, establishes 18 as the minimum voting age for both state and federal elections. Like all lines that divide legal childhood from adulthood, the voting age is essentially arbitrary, meaning it's determined by a chance or whim. Indeed, in modern America, 18-year-old voting has become unborn, meaning you release it from a place, from one of its most important original justifications, which was matching the minimum age for draft eligibility, itself also an arbitrary line. Despite this, raising or lowering the voting age, as some groups have suggested, seems a waste of time at best. Okay, so now I want you to reread lines 44 through 45. That's that highlighted line right there. I want you to use your own words to summarize the author's claim. So our author's claim is definitely raising or lowering the voting age, as some groups have suggested, seems a waste of time. So I want you to rewrite that in your own words. What does that make you seem that's going on to you? Does it seem that raising or lowering the voting age is a good thing? It's a bad thing? What do you think seems a waste of time? What does that mean to you? I do want you to take a couple minutes and write your answer down. What would that mean to you? So my possible answer would, it doesn't make much sense to change the voting age. If somebody says something is a waste of time, that's meaning like you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't waste your time trying to do something. So that would make me think that lowering or even touching the voting age in general is such a waste of time. So let's continue to read on. The American colonies mostly set their voting ages at 21, reflecting British common law. This requirement went largely unchallenged until World War II, when several members of Congress proposed amending the Constitution to lower the age to 18. Between 1942 and 1970, federal legislators introduced hundreds of such proposals, but the issue lacked momentum until the late 1960s, when a confluence of factors, including the escalating war in Vietnam, pushed agenda. The 26th Amendment itself was a culmination of some creative political maneuvering by congressional advocates, which is a crucial assist from the Supreme Court in Oregon versus Mitchell. So now, like we did on the other one, since we found our claim, which is raising or lowering the voting age, has suggested to seem a waste of time, which is that highlighter right there. Now in lines 44 through 58, so which is that middle paragraph right there, I want you to point out some of the examples that the author used to support her claim. So here, I'll give you one example. American colonies reflect British common law. Let me find that, sorry. American colonies mostly set their voting age at 21, reflecting British common law. Or you could talk about getting the voting age changed from 21 to 18. Just find me at least two examples from that paragraph in the middle that supports her claim. Remember, our claim is what's highlighted right now. But now you've got to find evidence that proves that. Remember, when we think of claim, reasoning, and evidence, we look at ourselves like a lawyer. So when you got to prove that somebody's innocent or prove that somebody's guilty, you have to have plenty of facts and evidence to support that. You can't just say that he did it. You've got to give me reasons why. Well, when you give me reasons, you got to give me evidence and proof how that even happened. You can't tell me that he didn't do it because he was at the park. We want to know more. So now, I want you to take another moment to think about this. So I want you to think about why adults seem so interested in debating issues such as the voting age or when teenagers can get a driver's license. Why would you think that adults would be so concerned with that? I want you to write down a couple ideas. And then once you write down your ideas for that, I want you to think about I want you to think, does this author provide sufficient evidence? So remember, we talked about sufficient before we went on the break. So remember, if your sufficient is if your evidence is sufficient, it has to be sound and it has to be relatable. Meaning, it has to relate to your topic. So if it's sound, that means it's relatable and there's enough of it. Remember, you have to have sufficient amount of evidence. You got to have enough. You can't just say, I'm the best basketball shooter in the middle school. You got to give me reasons why. You got to talk about what's your free throw percentage, how much playing time do you get? You have to have all this evidence to prove that. So somebody's not going to take your word for it. You've got to have proof. So with that being said, do you think so far the two articles that we read, do you think that they provided a sufficient amount of evidence, meaning it relates to their topic, and is there enough? Just write yes or no now.